Is Joe Packer making a short film for my studio during the COVID-19 lockdown. Um, it's quite a strange time actually because in some ways it's got some positives, even though it's quite a bad time, because I've actually got more time in the studio than I normally have, due to partly due to being furloughed by my day job in the theatre, which means that I don't have to go to work there. Um, and my studio, luckily, is very near where I live, so I don't have to. I can get there on my bicycle in a couple of minutes without encountering any other human contact, which has been a pretty good thing, really. So I'm actually getting more work done in this studio than I normally would. So I've just been working on a few things. So this painting is a painting that I was working on before that was very cramped and compact. So what happened is I kind of then built a frame and sort of expanded it. So it sort of reduced the sort of density of the image, but I was also quite pleased with the way that I could then work quite thinly on the outer section of the painting, which sort of like some sort of dense compacted time, but then with this sort of looser sort of fresh, almost like sort of green shoots surrounding it. This is still a sort of work in progress. I'm not quite sure where it's going to sort of end up, but that's where I am with it at the moment. So my paintings, I do think of them as landscapes, but they're not sort of landscapes in a kind of literal sense, as in they're not depicting a particular place, but more they sort of evoke. Well, I'm sort of thinking about sort of places that I've known, particularly where I grew up. So they're about sort of evoking a sort of feel of a place, but at the same time they're a sort of painting in their own right. So they sort of exist in their own right, and you wouldn't need the information of where the place was, or where it's meant to be sort of getting the feel of for the painting to function. It's kind of got its own language and its own way of communicating, but at the same time the painting does kind of relate to sort of memories and ideas of sort of landscapes, or sort of fragmented bits of landscapes and sort of memory, if that makes any sense. So these are some works that are in very early stages. I work on quite a few paintings at the same time, but I wouldn't normally sort of reveal these paintings at this particular early stage, but it's just to show sort of what I've got going on in the studio at the moment. So they're all have had just one or two sessions on them, and they're not anything yet. They're just trying to get something down to sort of then respond to, so the painting can sort of grow from these sort of starting points. This one here I've worked on a bit more, so there is sort of something starting to develop, but it's still very much sort of underpainting. As you can see, it's kind of still not sort of a coherent sort of thing that sort of works in its own sort of right, but it does kind of, I can feel like it's got sort of promising things going on that I will then be able to sort of expand on and kind of work over, and hopefully the painting will start sort of growing into something in its own right, that sort of almost the painting will start telling me what to do, which is the sort of point you want to get to in a way. I know that sounds a strange thing, but I think it's a sort of two-way dialogue between me and the painting when I'm making them, which is what keeps us painting, really, that kind of feeling, that kind of thing. So you can see these are literally just, sort of fragmented bits of things going on that make no sense at all at the moment, but they give you something to sort of work with, to sort of grapple with. So as well as working on sort of oil paintings, I've also actually largely in the last sort of week or two been working on sorts of small gouache and acrylic paintings. This is quite a good way of working, I found, for me, because I can kind of work through kind of ideas quite quickly without having to wait for sort of long drying times between sort of different glazed layers of paint. I do like working that uses gouache, and then you sort of put layers of varnish over the gouache, which stops it then breaking down if you want to then scrub around and work over another layer, which means you can sort of build up a painting in the same way that an oil painting builds up, but in a much quicker space of time, which I'm finding quite a fruitful way of working. So these are sort of some of the ones I've sort of currently got on the go. None of them are finished. I often start like with that one there in the middle. I just get a couple of collage sort of failed drawings or paintings, stick them on, which gives me a kind of starting point to work from. And then this is the sort of small homemade kind of easel type thing here that I've been using to sort of paint on. So it's quite a sort of different way of working to work on a large oil painting, but I like the sort of immediacy and way you can work through ideas quite quickly. So that's been quite a fruitful way of working in this sort of lockdown period as well. In fact, it's the way I sort of started working once we were in this strange time and couldn't quite work out how to sort of approach working. This is at the other side of my studio where there's a couple of more sort of developed works that are kind of probably nearing completion. This one, I sort of feel like it's nearly there, but it's still not quite there, so it'll probably still be reworked a bit. But I've sort of will do what I do quite often, which is leave it for a while, and then just think about where I'm going to sort of go next or work on it next to try and pull it to some sort of conclusion. There's two sort of very tall canvases that I've turned away. They're sort of too terrible to actually show on camera. Every artist probably has something like that in the corner of their studio that they're hoping they can turn around and rework at some point, but at the moment I've sort of tried to forget about those two. This is another one, if the light changes so we can see it, but yeah, it's sort of getting there, but it's not fully sort of working yet. It still doesn't work as a whole, so that again will be reworked at some point. So yeah, that's where I am at the moment, just continuing with this sort of extra time I've got in the studio, seeing how long it's going to go on for, and I'll just carry on working while this period goes on, and we'll see what happens on the other side.